I have used microaggressions against my own race. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think when I was younger, there was definitely some jokes that I made, which I deeply regret, but trust me, I'm picking up the slack now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Mata Warfield.
And my name is Hawa Zabel. Welcome back to our podcast. We're so happy to have you here once again. Today, we're going to talk about, actually, we're not going to do as much talking as what we usually do because this video is going to be a reaction video on a very popular video that's going around on YouTube. So I know that last time we posted a reaction video, well, let's just say we got a lot of reactions from you guys because we had a lot of people that loved what we had to say, and then we had a lot of people that did not like what we had to say. But either ways, I think it was good that we posted the video. So hopefully you guys like this video. Let us know. Obviously, comment on our video, and feel free to respond to our video as well.
And this video is from Julie. It's a channel on YouTube, and I will post a link if you want to go watch it yourself, because I'm not sure if we're going to react to the whole thing.
What is the experience like for transracial adoptees in America? We partnered with Lionsgate on their upcoming film Joyride to hear the stories of real-life adoptees and how their experiences shaped their lives. Adopted kids are more screwed up than biological kids. 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm really curious about you two.
Yeah. I know so many biological kids that are screwed up. They were raised in like a healthy, nuclear, cliche, white picket fence family. And I know several adopted kids that are so successful, that are doing great. I mean, shout out Simone Biles. She went to the Olympics and she was adopted.
Can I move? Like, she changed my mind a bit. Like,
Come on.
Can I?
I'm like, she has a point there. I can't.
No, I can strongly disagree with that.
No, because like, the thing is, she changed my mind on that because like, as a foster kid, like somebody who went through all that, we are, like we go through so much, like through that whole process, seeing and feeling neglected from like the foster parents. But I don't let my past, where I grew up, like define who I am to make me screwed up.
Yeah, so I'm on strongly agree because I've been through a few therapeutic boarding schools, wilderness programs. One of them, I remember, it's a place where wealthy parents send their children. It's privilege, and even with all that privilege, everybody there was messed up, just saying like they weren't stable, whether it was a drug addiction or just like bad temper or violence. Adoptees all carry this trauma. Maybe it has something to do with identity and not knowing a lot about our background. Well, some of us not knowing a lot about our background. I think like we don't even have a birthday. And me personally going through that and growing up in a colorblind environment, it's kind of like we were left to fend for ourselves. And I think any people that have to fend for themselves are gonna go through some messed up shit.
I'm going to stop it right there.
All right, I was too.
So I'm in the middle with that stuff because yes, adoptees, especially adoptees like us who came from a war-torn country, we're gonna have PTSD in that manner. I don't like using the word screwed up because it's not that we're screwed up. We've just been through a lot of things. And one of the things that I've experienced as adoptee is like, I feel like that me having that kind of followed me in a way where it was constantly like shoved down my throat that you're screwed up, you're screwed up, you're screwed up. And it's like, and it kind of gets into your psyche a little bit because of the things that you've experienced. And you're like, and it makes you feel like a bad person. And I, of course, it depends on the kid. Your kid that you gave birth to, they can also be screwed up because they've also experienced traumatic things in their lives. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like my thing on both of them. What do you think?
I'm kind of in the middle as well. I feel like there are a lot of biological children that, like you mentioned, go through quite a bit of trauma that leaves them a bit screwed up or maybe unstable mentally. I think trauma and like violence, for example, and even just sometimes biologically, some people maybe just, well, not necessarily biologically, but maybe like their upbringing, there's a lot of neglect. There's a lot of neglect in the household. So they have just been conditioned to be, grow up to have some instability, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that necessarily is chosen. It's not really chosen whether you're adopted or you're not, right?
Yeah.
One thing
Yes.
I can say though, right? One thing I can say is that similar to the Black girl who just spoke about going to basically therapeutic boarding schools and residential like schools that basically are filled with teenagers that maybe come from a more privileged background and are adopted and do have a lot of challenges, relational challenges, and just overall just like self-esteem challenges. Maybe they've gone through drug addiction or whatever. One thing I can say speaking on that is there is a higher percentage of adopted kids in those type of facilities and residential programs and boot camps. From what my research is about 40% of when you take any residential like therapeutic boarding school, about 40% of them will be adopted. Right. So that just means that generally speaking, these kids have gone through some type of trauma that's made it really hard for them to live in the real world. And so they need a little bit extra type of support and help. You know what I mean? So, but like you were saying also, like screwed up, what does screwed up mean? Like that's such a, I don't know, that's such a,
I don't like how it's used because it's like,
yeah,
who choose this, you know? All right.
But yeah.
So thank you for sharing, by the way. I look at this question through two lenses. The adopted community as a whole is 4 times more at risk of suicide than non-adopted counterparts. I think that adopted kids are more at risk for struggle, not because of us, but because of society and because of the dominant narrative of white saviorism that is all surrounding adoption. We all know this narrative, but the narrative for those that don't know is this notion of adoptees should feel lucky, adoptees must be grateful, and gratitude is related to this idea of repayment. The effect of that is that we as adoptees, as a whole community, feel like we're less worth than our non-adopted counterparts. It makes us feel like you should repay your life that you were given. You should repay the fortunes that were given to you. And for little kids, how can we repay something that's immeasurable? And it's not fair for us as little kids to have that weight, that burden on us while growing up. And because we have that weight, because we have that burden, that's what, so to speak, messes us up.
You're bringing back some stuff.
damn, okay, mic drop.
Honestly, oh my gosh,
That was
deep, and it was true. Like I know I struggled with that and feeling like I owe my parents in adopting me, and as an adoptee, I feel like we owe our parents more than their own birth children, where I feel like their own birth children may necessarily not feel that way, depending on how they were raised or whoever their parents are. For me, there were times I didn't ask for certain things, like especially when I was on my own, living on my own, independent, and where my other siblings were. Even my adoptive brother, he didn't feel like he did not ask my parents for certain things. Where our siblings who were biological, they felt more comfortable in asking for help from them, and I felt like I didn't want to ask because they've already done so much for me. And of course, they never said you can't ask. You know, they never said that. But it's like I felt like, okay, well, I feel like I don't want to keep owing you. You know, it's like this like big like burden of like that weighs you down. And again, they never said I owed them anything, but it just sometimes kind of come off like that. And where sometimes they can also come off like that, insinuating in a way of just being grateful. But I don't think they mean it in a way of you do owe me, because I feel they don't. You know, I'm sure your parents are like that too. I'm sure they're not like you owe me.
right. No, they're not like that. And I actually just did a video recently about that, about how, you know, a lot of adoptive kids, they feel like it's very hard for them to reach out and ask for things from their adoptive family. Like it's almost as if they feel like they don't deserve it and they haven't earned that. You know what I mean? Like just for simple things, right? Like it's almost like they have to just take what's given to them by their adoptive family, and that them asking for a little bit more is just it's just kind of unimaginable, and it's almost like they're putting a strain on their family when in reality, biological children ask for a lot from their parents generally.
Yeah.
Right? If you have a healthy dynamic with your parents, because that's the job of a parent, is to take care and provide resources that a child needs. But for us, it's like we can just take the bare minimum, and if it's not even like asking for monetary things, feeling like we have to repay them like monetarily or whatever, right? Because, oh, you spent $50,000 to adopt me, so now I have to, it will show up in a way of like behavior, right? Like I have to act extra good, angel child, because I know you have invested so much into me. So that's my way of giving back, is to not get in trouble. And I can see how that can tie into like, a sense of maybe not necessarily, maybe self-esteem, a little bit of self-esteem. It's like you're doing things to please. You're always in the pleasing state of mind. You know what I mean? And that's not very that's overall not healthy. And I'm not saying that biological children don't also struggle with this. Of course they do. But I just think for adoptees, it's a little bit more of an extreme level than with biological.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and for me, there have been times where things were said to me that I was like, damn, I feel like I really owe you. There's been times where like, I can't wait to make so much money and like send you a paycheck, because there's been like things that happened between me and my family where nasty things were said to me. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know. I don't feel like we should owe them. I the more I heal, the more I like, I don't owe you in that time, in that concept of giving money back to you because you spent all that money on me.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm like, like, Jesus.
I chose to be on this side because I felt if I was on that side, it'd be denying my experience as an adoptee, the fear of abandonment that feels inherent to being an adoptee. Because of that, I have definitely been in relationships I shouldn't have been in, toxic ones, and relationships for way too long. What comes with that then is like feeling like you have to prove that you're worthy of love constantly because of the inner voids and wounds of being abandoned as a baby, or just abandoned in general.
Those wounds cut deep.
Hi, my name is Matea. I am adopted from China in the 90s during the one-child policy. So one thing I'm super grateful about with my parents is they really valued making sure that my brother and I experienced our heritage. Every summer, we would go to this camp that specifically focused on our Chinese heritage and taught us different aspects of it. So like language, calligraphy, dance, martial arts. And so that was a really special and I think important experience to have as a transracial adoptee.
Hello, good humans. We hope you're enjoying this very special episode of Spectrum. I'm here with the director of this episode, Liz.
Hey, everyone. We're excited to be partnering with Lionsgate in bringing together this group of transracial adoptees to promote their upcoming movie.
This movie centers around a group of friends who embark on a crazy journey across Asia with Audrey, an Asian woman
who's adopted by white parents,
to find her birth mother. And it ends up being a trip full of twists and turns that's heartfelt and hilarious.
As a transracial adoptee myself, I love that an adoptee narrative can cross genres into a wild comedy.
Yes.
But my favorite part of it is that there's such a powerhouse cast of AAPI actors.
Some of our very favorite people, like Ashley Park,
Sherry Cola,
Stephanie Hsu, Sabrina Wu, and many more surprises. There's definitely some pretty raunchy moments in the movie, but I love that.
I'm gonna speak this into existence. I hope they make a video like that for some people like us, like where we go
like
back
for African people. Hell yeah, that would be so fun.
That movie, I still haven't seen that movie, but I really want to see it. But that's just all I want. The Joyride is the movie.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one either. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, but let me go back.
It really just breaks the mold of how the API community has been portrayed on screen up until now.
Yeah, it is fresh, and I felt uncomfortable watching it with my mother.
So please go watch with your mother. Joyride is coming out in theaters on July 7th, and you can buy your tickets now.
All right, now let's get back to the episode.
We'll see you guys. Bye.
Transracial adoption should not be allowed. 3, 2, 1, go.
I mean, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
We're all transracial adoptees. That would be saying that you would be against your own adoption. And I think I just want to add also, it's different from being colorblind. That's not why I'm here, just to clarify.
Okay, theoretically, let's say we were on agree for one reason. Do you guys have any gripes against transracial adoption?
Well, yeah, like I guess like what I just said a little bit.
Savior complex.
Savior complex.
I mean, there are people in the world who I think view transracial adoption as this like, oh, I'm doing a cool thing. Like, I've met people who have said those specific things where they're like, I've always just wanted a black child, you know, but that's it. There's no like, why do you want a black child? Or, you know, or like, it was like a savior mentality almost. And I do think that it's really important as the further we go to have that education and to not go in with it with a colorblind stance, because it does do a lot more harm, at least it did for me growing up, than, yeah, just opening up your kids to the culture that they came from.
Yeah, no, you really spoke to something. All my friends that are black or Arabic have all this culture that they grew up with, and they like years and years of like learning stuff, and that's what I missed out on. So for the future generation.
Yeah, so one thing that I'd like to add when it comes to, first of all, I strongly disagree. Well, I strongly disagree, and I agree with what their decision, and also with certain gripes. When it comes to adoption, if you take the road of white saviorism or thinking you're saving somebody, you basically are not focusing on the identity of your adopted child. You're gonna completely be blind to that. And being blind to that, then that means you're going to be blind to the things that they may face, as like for us being black in America and being a black child in general and in this world. So you as the parent, you have to be cognizant of that in order to like understand your child so you can help them in the best way possible. So if you want to adopt, and if you feel like it makes you feel good in that white saviorism of adopting, I would take a step back and reassess and think, okay, wait, I need to think about something else. Maybe, yes, it may make me feel good. And I also feel like I want to help in a healthy way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I have a little bit of different perspective. I think that transracial adoption is perfectly fine. My thing is, after you adopt the child, what kind of experience are you going to provide for that child and for your family? What type of help are you going to get access to ensure that your child has, you know, an upbringing that's healthy, that's supportive, that's loving. Now, I understand that there's some people who are privileged and they want to adopt because they see children that are in poverty and they just want to help because they know that they have, they're in a privileged position and they have the money and they can. And I'm totally okay with that. If you have some saviorism complex, I think that's okay, because at the end of the day, like, only rich people really can afford to adopt. At the end of the day, poor people can't really afford. I mean, some poor people do it, but generally it's like because it's your family member that maybe they're an orphan, and so you have to adopt them to make sure that they're getting you know, they're sheltered and they have food, they have family and love, right? But at the end of the day, most of the time people who are adopting are people who are going to be wealthier, who maybe they feel bad for kids who are in impoverished communities or living. And so I think it's okay to have a little bit of saviorism, but if you're aware that that's the reason that you're adopting, just make sure that you get the right support system and resources and educate yourself, and acknowledge that there might be some ignorance on your side of lack of awareness and knowledge. And as long as you're open and willing to learn and know that you don't know everything, I think that's okay. And again, going back to, you know, reasons why people adopt, sometimes, like, let's say there's a child who is has some medical issue, right? They are sick, maybe they're sick, their illness is like maybe terminal, or is it terminal? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, terminal, or like, you know, in Sierra Leone, like we said in previous videos, if they are mentally ill or handicapped, like, people don't want to take care of them. So
People
in
don't
that
want to
case,
take care of
like,
them.
if you want to like help that child out because they're on the street, I'm not against
one's
adoption in
complaining.
that at all. Like, yeah, adopt them. I'm not against adoption at all. And it's just about you being aware. Just be aware.
Right.
Like, if that's your sole purpose of you wanting to feel good about yourself in saviorism, in that concept, that's not healthy for the child. It's not. at
Yeah,
all.
if you just want to adopt just so you can parade your adopted child around,
Yeah.
then obviously that's like, okay, come on now. Like that there's too much of a responsibility to take care of a child for you to just do that
Yeah.
just for clout or for you know, making yourself look good. If that's your sole purpose, then you definitely should not be adopting, because raising a child, whether they're adopted or not, is a huge responsibility. But if you're
Yeah.
doing it because there's a little bit of saviorism, but you also just want to have a child and you want to give them a better life, then I feel like then that should be perfectly fine. Like no one should be able to stop you, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who are not willing to adopt. So
I mean,
someone that's gonna
absolutely,
go through.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page about that.
Generations and people who are adopting right now, I think the biggest thing would be to stop being colorblind, because we're not helping the kids.
Yeah. I agree that everybody deserves a set of parents, family. Everybody deserves to be loved and nurtured and cared for. However, the recent legislation that almost didn't pass, I guess, for ICWA, which is the Indigenous Child Welfare Act, being Native American, and not adopted by Native Americans, I don't know anything. You know, there's so much about my life that just didn't make sense until I went out and learned it myself. So I feel like that small community of Native children need to stay with other Natives. It doesn't have to be the same tribe, but just keep them Native, because, you know, our population's declining.
I mean, I am standing here where I am, but I do think it is a little bit of a privileged place to be standing, because I think the reality of adoption in the US and culture in the US is that it's very hard to be a person of color here in this country. You know, my parents were white. My parents being white will never understand what it's like to be a person of color in the US.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to connect with me in that way, which is kind of a big deal. Now, there are other things that they do really, really well, but the reality is living here is kind of tough for a person of color, and they can recognize that for me, but they can't know what my experience is.
Can each of you tell me some of the crazy stuff that people have said to you as a transracial adoptee?
Okay, who are your parents? My parents are white, so they never know where they are in the crowd.
Do you know your real parents, though?
What country are you originally from?
Oh yeah, where are you from?
I just get made fun of being adopted, so I would say my parents chose me. Yours just stuck with what they got.
You're so lucky. Congrats. Oh, that was a big one.
Emily, Famata, what were some that you got, like some weird questions or things that people told you?
Honestly, a lot of the things that they were saying, definitely. I can't think of other ones right now, but it was definitely a lot. And the stares that you get when you're out and about.
Yeah.
That's your dad. That's your kid. And then they get stuck, and they just look like, when you tell them she's adopted, they're just, or if you haven't said anything yet, they just are stuck in trying to figure out, how are y'all together like this? This does not make sense. Like, it just, their minds don't run properly.
But and another thing I get, it's not necessarily something that people say to me, but like whenever we're out, we're waiting in line for something, and then let's say like I'm in the front, or I'm behind. Let's say I'm usually behind because my parents are the ones like paying for tickets or something. Like, let's say we're at the movies, and then they'll be like, next, and then they'll like be like, for me, and then I'm about to go with my family. They're like, oh, did you get a ticket yet? And I'm like, I'm with them. Like, that happens all the time. Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
People would literally be like, congratulations. For what?
Are your parents coming to the parent meeting conference? They never came. Or are they coming to your football game? They never came.
For me, it actually comes from other Asians. So the microaggressions, it's like, yeah, Eli's white, or hey, if we go to a potluck, you can bring them a meatloaf, right?
Reset.
Trauma throwing. There should be a trauma dump moment right there.
Yeah, but adoptees can laugh at that, right?
Yeah, no. We all, the amount of dark humor we go through, like, I mean, come on, it's very common.
I have used microaggressions against my own race. 3, 2, 1, go.
I think when I was younger, There's definitely some jokes that I made, which I deeply regret, but trust me, I'm picking up the slack now. But I think it's also the fact that I was growing up countryside in like a predominantly white place made it so that like I accepted a lot of things, little comments or little jokes that I would just let slide, or people using the N-word. And I think when I started learning more about Black culture, that's when I was like, okay, that's really not okay. And this.
Oh yeah, I had to hold myself accountable 110%. I did use a lot of microaggressions against my own people. And a lot of it was, one, I wasn't aware of the Black culture in America. I consider myself African. So I always try to separate myself. Like when something would be in the news about Black people in America, I'm like, ugh, why are Black people like that? Like, why are they doing that? Like, what, can't you just like, conform to what the police officer is saying? Like, it's not that hard. Not understanding at all, like, growing up in America, being Black, and how, the racism and all that stuff. So I used to say stuff like that, try to separate myself. And then being around friends, I remember one of my white friends was, we were driving somewhere and we saw a Black person walking. They're like, oh, close your doors, it's a Black person over there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And that one, I felt icky saying that.
Oh my God.
I felt very icky saying that in my head. And something in me said, Emily, that was not right to say at all. Because at the end of the day, if she's saying that, she's including you in that. Yeah. And I was young. Once again, I was young. And I hold myself accountable to that. And then another instance was to make other white people feel comfortable in me being Black. I would, kind of make fun of myself. And I had to do a presentation in front of our class. And I got up there and I was uncomfortable. It was a whole bunch of white kids. I'm the only Black kid in there. And I'm like, hi guys, I'm Emily and I'm Black. And everybody's like, yeah, so they all started laughing and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know. And, trying to make everybody else comfortable. And I did that a lot growing up, and trying to kind of hide myself in plain sight, if that makes sense. And I feel I've forgiven myself because I was a kid trying to fit into a world where I didn't look like, where no one looked like. So I don't harp on myself too much about it now. Now that I know about Black, that's a whole different ball game. I don't do that anymore.
I mean, honestly, same here. Like, I don't remember specific instances where I may have like said something or or said specific things that were maybe microaggression, but I do remember like feeling a certain way. Like I remember like, especially when I was in boarding school, because I mean, I was kind of spoiled like when I was younger. And I remember like when I was in boarding school, like, I would have like some of like my like, so there were some Black girls that were there, and I remember feeling like I was better than them, like, and they weren't biological. Like I know I felt better than them. And I remember there was also like there was one point where I was kind of embarrassed because my family's a little bit more like, I wouldn't say we're like super, super rich, but we're really well off, And I remember like my, like me also thinking that made me better than other Black people because they were like more in the hood or poverty, and I just didn't understand their. But then I do remember there was a point like I remember these kids in middle school, like they would always call me rich girl, rich Black girl, and I remember getting kind of upset about it. But even though I was upset, I still kind of like felt like I liked it because of me, and I was like, stop making fun of me. But like, I don't know, like, and I think that happened for a long time until I was like an adult. And then I started to have to go out and get my own shit. You know what I mean? My parents were like, we're not spoiling you as an adult. You have to get your own things. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm really in it like everybody else, So I'm not any better at all whatsoever. And I used to think the way I talked made me a little bit better because I worked so hard to get rid of my accent. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I don't want to have an accent. Like, and there was some microaggression against like, I think like Africans specifically too. Like if I saw like at school, because again, back then it wasn't cool to be African. Like I was being called African booty scratcher, all these crazy names. And so whenever I saw a group of African people, I would always go to the opposite side. Like I never wanted to be by them. Like it was by my own people. I was like, I'm so embarrassed by it now. But before I just did not feel comfortable at all.
You were a kid.
Yeah, I was a kid. And I never, even when I started to have more awareness of it, I never felt bad about it because
Mhm.
like it's just I think a lot of that is kind of conditional. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I can't really blame anybody for that. I feel like it's just conditional and being a kid, not we're having awareness. And then when I grew up, I
Yeah.
had to get my own things. Things changed
Yeah.
automatically.
So I'm on strongly agree because I hated being Asian growing up. I despised it, man. My dad would give me a buzz cut. I had glasses.
Oh, I wanted to add one more thing. Like sometimes people would call me like white girl or whatever, and I felt like good about that to a certain degree. Like there's times where I was like confused and I'm like, why would you call me that? Right. But then there was times what would happen and would be like, well, you know, like you're basically like a white girl anyways, like, you know, like that kind of stuff, like you can fit in, you know? And so when I was hanging out with white people when I was younger, I felt good about that statement because it made me feel like I belonged and I could fit in. I could like socialize with white people. And yeah, so that's just one thing I wanted to add. I feel like that's a big thing. I don't know. I'm surprised you never experienced that?
No, I have. Oh, for
Okay.
sure. Especially after I left my hometown and I, integrated with being in the Navy. There's so many different types of cultures, people, different backgrounds. When I tell you, people always call me, "Oh, you're just a white girl in a black girl's body." That was like the favorite phrase that everybody met me with. When I people still do it to me till this day. Like when I met my husband's family, one of their cousins, as soon as I started talking, they're like, "Why you sound like a white girl?" I was like, come on, y'all. And because not all black people are a monolith. We're not all gonna sound the same and do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I got that a lot, and it used to upset me to my core. And I'm like, because I feel like you're trying to erase me as a person. You're trying to erase my identity, my blackness, and who I am by telling me that. And of course, people are being ignorant, and I'm like, no, please don't call me that. I'm a black girl. I'm a black woman. I'm an African woman. Don't call me. I'm not.
And that really irked me when I became an adult because, you know, I'm trying to re-identify my blackness, right? Get more connected to my black side. And I just remember getting so upset about it because, again, the erasure of who I am. And it's like, whenever a topic came up about being black, it's almost like your opinion does not even matter because you were adopted by white people. And to this day, I still get it. And it's like, oh, I'm a very smart woman. I'm very observant. I read up on what's going on in the world. I have experienced I've experienced pretty much everything that black people have. No, I wasn't raised up in the hood, but I've experienced other things, right? And so it's like for someone to say that just because I am adopted by white people, you know what I mean? Like that completely just erases my experience and erases the validity of what I have to say based on the topics that we're talking about. I don't know. That used to irk me.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a lot of it is coming from people who look like us, like from Africans to African Americans, and just trying to like. There were times where I felt like I didn't fit in and I felt like they were making sure that I knew I didn't fit in because they would make fun of my cooking. Or I bet your parents didn't put seasoning in their food.
Oh, the meatballs and the meatloaf. I still get that.
And I'm like, stop, knock it off. And also Africans are like, oh, well, you're not really real African because, you've been here since you were 8 years old. I'm like, yes, I am. And I used to basically I never went off on anybody. Like I used to almost say to African Americans, I'm like, I'm more black than you will ever be because I'm from the motherland. I'm from the motherland. You don't even know where you're from the motherland. You don't know where you're from. You're not even from here. So I get into all of that, but I never said it all in my head. But it's just like, we're not a monolith. There's so many different types of black people out there you're gonna find, and there's beauty in that. There's so much beauty in that.
Like I'm making these jokes to make other people feel comfortable.
I do identify with your story as well. I grew up also like hating that I was Asian, but like specifically Chinese. I would hear like kind of a negative connotation about Chinese, that like they're liars and they're ugly, and also being around predominantly white community and like in high school, like hanging out with a lot of group of girls that were often white and I was the token Asian, like just made me more and more hate my appearance and not think that I was attractive. I guess with being insecure with that, it's almost like, yeah, that internalized racism and like self-hatred that happens. So that's why I am on this side as well.
Oh, can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
Like totally resonant with what both of you guys were saying. I was always proud to be Asian. I was proud of my differences. But I think it was always interesting reckoning with this idea of being proximal to whiteness. And what I mean by that is when white people growing up said, oh, like you're basically white, they were saying that to validate me as being like a first-class citizen because I'm like almost white because I was raised in a white family. And then when Asians would call me a banana, or when Asians would say, oh, well, you're not really Asian, that would hurt on a different level.
Yeah, I would get that too.
Because, of course, we are Asian. And yeah, it just feels incredibly invalidating.
I mean, for me, like, I'm on strongly disagree because I'm a proud Hispanic. Like, I'm Nicaraguense and I'm Honduran, and I'm always gonna be proud of that no matter what. And I get how some people can be like, oh, my race, like, it falls in my bloodline that, like, there's alcoholism, drug addicts, but I'm never gonna let that.
Yeah, I just want to add something quickly to that, in the whole idea of you trying to make others feel comfortable, or that when people say you are not who you are, it's hurtful to adoptees because we already have such a hard time in figuring out who we are, and we don't feel stable because we've been given up. You know what I mean? So we're like on this teeter-totter of not figuring out who we are, and then we're trying to find our footing. We're trying to find our place where we feel like we belong. And then when we find the people who look like us, and then they're telling us, oh, you're not really that, it is extremely hurtful. It's earth-shattering. It is painful. And so if you are someone who's watching this and you see somebody saying something like that to an adoptee, try to step in and say, that's not nice to say. You know, don't try to say things like that, because even though if you think you're joking, because what you're doing, you're harming that person, because they already struggle with themselves in belonging anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Ooh.
Oh.
My adoptive parents, they're actually Salvadorian.
Yes. So I would say with my family, like cousins, grandparents, all of that, the conversation of my adoption didn't really start happening until like when Mike Brown was shot. That was kind of the first time that I really felt invalidated by my own family, because I think I was trying to get them to recognize like I'm a Black woman, and there are people right now who look like me that are going through very traumatic things, but my family didn't view it that way. I felt very invisible. Yeah, I didn't have anyone to relate to. All my family comes from a really small town in the Midwest, like 95% white, and to the point where like the KKK, it used to be a sundown town, like that kind of thing. And so, yeah, growing up, it just went from, I was just kind of there as Michaela, but not a Black person. It was more of just like, they would always say to me is like, I don't see you as Black. I just,
100%.
Yeah, you know,
and all the time. And I was happy. I was glad. I was like, yes, I'm not gonna like be a victim of racism. Like, yes.
At the time, exactly, it never bothered me at the time, but I think the more I processed it, the older I got, I realized how damaging that term is, because I mean, I think we've all experienced this of like, who am I? And so then I was like, okay, if my family doesn't see me as Black, what am I? You know, that was like the question that I still sometimes think today, even, that's like always in the back of my head. So, yeah.
100%.
Nature is stronger than nurture. 3, 2, 1, go.
Nature is stronger than nurture.
So your genetics are stronger than how you were raised.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
This is confusing.
You said it correctly. We just,
Yeah.
it's just all the trauma, you know. I want to know, like, why do you agree, like, out of everybody here, you know?
So I was raised by conservative Christian parents, and I do not look like a conservative Christian whatsoever. Growing up in a very strict, no alcohol, no drugs, no gambling, no tattoos, being gay is not okay, marriage is for a man and a woman. Here I am, you know, in a same-sex relationship, covered in tattoos. Both of my biological parents suffered tremendously with their mental health. They were in and out of, mental facilities. I mean, not to be cliche, but 2 out of every 3 Native Americans struggles with addiction. And I did struggle with homelessness and addiction, just like my parents did. I read the Bible cover to cover growing up, and I still made the choices and had the journey that I had.
I'm neutral for the fact that, like, at some point it was nature. Genetically, my dad drank a little bit. My mom, she suffered through mental health. And, I remember being a kid seeing all of that. But I don't let that define me, because genetically, like I said, you can stop genetically the nature of what you're surrounding.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm the first person in my biological family to go to college. Thank you, just got accepted to a UC.
So when it comes to nature versus nurture, one of the things that I feel like adoptive parents should be aware of, and not necessarily to feel ashamed of, is the fact that the feelings and connections that you have with your adopted children versus your biological children are going to be different. And it's not something you can help at all. That's just how it is. So I know my parents kind of sometimes struggled with that, which they kind of like, felt, guilty in a way. But it's like, don't feel guilty, because that's just how it is. And sometimes you're going to have certain treatments that you're going to show towards your biological children that you're not necessarily going to show towards your adoptive children. It's not going to be something that you're doing on purpose, unless if you're like an evil person out there, but it's not something you're intentionally doing on purpose. And also adopted children, when you see that, you also need to understand that they're not trying to do it on purpose. And if it's something that does hurt you, if they do certain things when it comes to emotional connection, try to talk to your parents in that, but also give them grace in that aspect as well, because they can't help it. And also you can't help your feelings as well. Just talk to them.
Yeah. Thank you. It's never too late to get an education, but I'm on that path trying to make a better life for myself.
Yeah.
Being a criminologist, nature versus nurture is one of the biggest dilemmas. And after almost 10 years studying, I'm here because I see that environment affects people tremendously. Whether you're still with your biological parents, whether you're adopted, foster care, it doesn't matter. For example, crime or criminality can be developed by your environment. If you grew up in like white suburbia, white picket fence, a lot of money, or if you grew up in a family where everybody is gang related, who has more chance of developing criminality, right? And it's not necessarily who your parents are or your bloodline. So that's why I'm here.
Who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. So I met my biological family when I was 18. I went to a family reunion. That was kind of like my first big thing where I like met everyone, like over 100 people. I went by myself. I definitely felt out of place. I was like, these are the people who are my blood and I look like them, but I also felt like a stranger still. And I think that just goes into the identity piece that made it even harder for me, because I was like, I finally met my birth family, but these people do not feel like family at all. But also my birth dad, there's things that I see in him, especially like when I'm angry, we act the same. Or like there's things from my birth mom that we just both like she grew up doing that I've noticed that I do as well. So I definitely think there are things that like I've seen from my family that I've noticed in me, but I also still feel like a stranger at the same time.
I feel like also like children, babies, like we mimic a lot.
Yeah.
So like even, I know this is about transracial adoptions, but if you look at just same race adoption, people would be like, you're adopted, but you look so much like your parents.
Yes.
They get that all the time. Well, it's because you have the same mannerisms. I have the same mannerisms as my mom. But people won't really seek those out or look for that or notice it because my mom is white and I'm black.
I am very much like my dad and very logical, very emotional like my mother. I've not gotten the chance to meet my birth family yet. I also grew up very, very Christian, very, very conservatively, and I think that did impact me quite a bit. So I think that it's a push and pull for certain things that are nature and versus certain things that are nurture. So I don't think there's an answer for it.
I feel like you have to understand the nature in order to correctly nurture. Because if you don't nurture based on nature, you might not like educate them correctly.
Yes, yeah, really well said.
I'm very happy to be celebrating everyone's differences today, hearing each of your stories and the impact that I know you guys are making in your personal lives. Like, it's very cool, and just know that I'm celebrating you today.
Yes.
Good shit, guys.
I'm just happy I can finally have trauma buddies to talk to this about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's the video.
That was a great video. I really
was.
enjoyed watching that. I think everyone on the panel was a great panel of adoptees, and I think everyone had a lot of good insight, you know, with different experiences. That was, I think, inspiring, and also gave me new perspective as well.
Yeah, and it makes you feel not alone. And a lot of the stuff that they were talking about is like, wow, I've experienced that. It makes you kind of have that comfort in, wow, a lot of us adoptees, the majority, we experience the same thing. And yeah, I hope you, as an adoptee who's watching this at home, I hope that video was comforting to you. And if you have any stories, any disagreed or agreed with any of what they had to say, write them down in the comments. Let us know or message us. You know, talk about your experience as an adoptee, because at the end of the day, the way to heal and the way to understand yourself better is by talking and telling your story.
Absolutely. That was well said. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is going to be the end of it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to comment, like Fatmata said, on this video. And also don't forget to like and share any of the videos that we've created over the last few months.
All right. Bye. Till next time.
Bye.